Hey everyone, welcome to today's video where we're diving deep into the world of professional bodybuilding. We're about to embark on an exciting comparison between two absolute titans of the sport, Big Ramy and Rubiel Mosquera. These guys are some of the biggest and most impressive bodybuilders we've seen in the last decade, and today we're going to put their physiques head to head. Now, before we jump in, let's set the stage. We're comparing Big Ramy's appearance at the 2022 Mr. Olympia, where he placed 5th, with Rubiel Mosquera showing at the 2024 Dubai Pro, where he took 4th place. It's worth noting that this isn't necessarily a comparison of these athletes at their absolute peak, but rather a snapshot of where they were at these specific competitions. Let's kick things off with the classic front double bicep pose. This is often considered the bread and butter of bodybuilding poses, and both of these guys bring something special to the table here. Starting with the lower body, both Big Ramy and Rubiel Mosquera are renowned for their massive quads. However, in this comparison, Rubiel's legs are actually dwarfing Big Ramy's. This is quite surprising given that Big Ramy was always known for his leg development. But we have to remember that Big Ramy has faced some challenges with his legs in recent years, possibly due to injuries or nerve damage. His legs are still massive, don't get me wrong, but they're not quite as full or aesthetically pleasing as they used to be. Rubiel, on the other hand, is looking fresh and powerful. His quads are thick, his adductors are full, and even his calves are impressive. Now let's talk about the arms. This is where Big Ramy really shines in this pose. His biceps have a beautiful peak to them and his triceps hang low, creating that full, round look that judges love to see. The way Big Ramy is hitting this pose, really opening up his lats and showcasing the full sweep of his arms, is just textbook. Rubiel's arms are certainly impressive in their own right, but in this particular instance, his execution of the pose isn't quite on par with Big Ramy's. Overall, while Rubiel brings incredible mass and freshness to this pose, I think we have to give the edge to Big Ramy here. His superior posing and the way he creates those classic bodybuilding lines just edges out Rubiel's sheer size. But it's close, very close. Moving on to the front lat spread, we see another interesting battle between mass and aesthetics. Once again, Rubiel's legs are stealing the show here. They're just so full and fresh looking. Big Ramy's legs, while still huge, are showing some signs of wear and tear. You can see some of those dents and bumps that have developed over the years. In the upper body though, Big Ramy starts to pull ahead. His lat spread is truly impressive, creating that wide, imposing look that this pose is all about. His conditioning also looks a touch better here, with more visible striations across his chest and shoulders. One thing that's really apparent in this pose is the difference in posing ability. Big Ramy, with his years of experience at the top level, is really nailing this pose. His execution is spot on, which is making a big difference. Rubiel, on the other hand, wasn't quite there with his posing at the Pro. It's worth noting that this was early in Rubiel's pro career, and I'm sure he's made huge strides in this area since then. Taking everything into account, the leg development, the upper body width, the conditioning and the posing, I think we have to give this one to Big Ramy as well. But again, it's not a blowout by any means. Now let's turn to the side and check out the side chest pose. This is where things get really interesting. Both of these guys are absolute mass monsters, pushing close to 300 pounds on stage, and it really shows from this angle. Big Ramy has always been good at using the side poses to hide any imbalances or asymmetries in his physique. From this angle, he's able to showcase some really impressive detailing, particularly in his glutes, big arms, and especially in his chest. However, we can start to see some of the areas where he's lost a bit of fullness over the years. His triceps, shoulders, chest, and quads are quite as round and full as they used to be in his prime. Rubiel, on the other hand, is just looking massive and full from every angle. His quads are hanging low and heavy with that crazy outer sweep. His hamstrings are thick and full. Moving up, his chest is rounder and fuller but less as compared to Big Ramy's, and his arms look absolutely huge. There's just a freshness and fullness to Rubiel's physique that's hard to ignore. While Big Ramy might have a slight edge in conditioning and detail, especially in the glutes, arms and chest, I think we have to give this pose to Big Ramy. The overall flow, fullness and roundness of his physique is just on another level in this side chest pose. The side tricep is another pose where both of these guys typically excel. Big Ramy, especially in his prime, was known for his impressive side tricep. Even at the 2022 Olympia, it was still one of his better poses. He's able to hide some of the weaker parts of his physique and create a really striking silhouette. However, Rubiel's side tricep is just on another level. When he pulls his arm back and flexes, his triceps just explode out of his arm. His chest looks big and full from this angle. His midsection is tight with visible abs. And once again, his legs are just stealing the show. The thickness of his quads, the sweep of his hamstrings, it's all working together beautifully in this pose. Big Ramy does show good conditioning here, and his structure allows him to create a pleasing overall shape. But Rubiel's combination of size, fullness and proportion is just too much to overcome. This pose goes to Rubiel Mosquera. Turning to the back poses, we start with the back double bicep. This has never been Big Ramy's strongest pose, even in his prime. His lats have always inserted a bit high, which makes it hard for him to create that really wide, tapering look that judges love to see. At the 2022 Olympia, his back was particularly problematic. The thickness and detail just weren't there compared to previous years. Rubiel, while not necessarily having the greatest back in bodybuilding, is miles ahead in this pose. His back is thicker, wider, and shows much better detail. The only area where Big Ramy might have a slight edge is in the lower body. His glutes and hamstrings show a bit more separation and detail. But when we're talking about a back pose, the back development has to be the priority, and Rubiel is clearly superior here. The back lat spread tells a slightly different story. This pose allows Big Ramy to showcase his incredible width, which is one of his standout features. His shoulder to waist ratio in this pose is truly impressive, creating that V taper that bodybuilding is all about. He's also showing better conditioning in this pose with more visible detail across his back. Rubiel still has the advantage in lower body development. His legs are just so massive and impressive from every angle. But in this particular pose, Big Ramy's width and conditioning give him the edge. It's a close call, but I think we have to give the back lat spread to Big Ramy. Moving to the abs and thigh pose, we see another really close battle. Both of these guys are known for their incredible leg development, and it really shows here. Their thighs are just enormous, to the point where it almost obscures some of the separation and detail. In terms of abs, it's a really interesting comparison. When Big Ramy really flexes his abs, they pop out impressively. However, Rubiel's waist actually looks smaller in this pose, and his abs seem more symmetrical and developed. Rubiel is also doing a better job of creating that X-frame in this pose. Even though Big Ramy has wider shoulders, Rubiel's flaring lats and smaller waist are creating a more aesthetically pleasing overall package. Leg-wise, it's almost too close to call. Big Ramy might have a slight edge in conditioning, but Rubiel's legs just look more massive overall. Given the total package, the better X-frame, the more aesthetic midsection, and the sheer mass of the legs, I think we have to give this pose to Rubiel Mosquera. Finally, we come to the most muscular pose. This is always a crowd pleaser, and both of these guys know how to hit it impressively. Big Ramy's version of this pose is particularly striking. His shoulders just explode in this pose, looking significantly bigger than Rubiel's. He's also able to really crunch down and create those deep separations that make this pose so impressive. Rubiel certainly doesn't look bad here. His traps and chest are popping nicely, and once again his overall mass is incredible. But there's just something about the way Big Ramy hits this pose that's hard to beat. The combination of his width, the size of his delts, and the way he can manipulate his midsection in this pose gives him the edge. So we'll give the most muscular to Big Ramy. So where does this leave us? If we're counting poses, it's actually a very easy. Big Ramy won 5 poses and Rubiel Mosquera have won 3 poses in our comparison. But as we all know, bodybuilding isn't always about simply counting pose wins. What we've seen here is 2 incredible physiques at different points in their evolution. Big Ramy, the former Mr. Olympia, is showing signs of the wear and tear that comes with years at the top of the sport. His legs aren't quite what they used to be, and he's lost some of that fullness that made him so dominant. But his structure, his width, and his ability to hit the mandatory poses are still top-notch. Rubiel Mosquera, on the other hand, is like a force of nature. The sheer mass and fullness of his physique is hard to ignore. His legs in particular are just on another level. And remember, this is Rubiel from the 2024 Dubai Pro. He's made significant improvements since then, particularly in his posing and presentation. Looking ahead, it's exciting to think about the possibility of these two squaring off at a future Mr. Olympia. If Rubiel can continue to improve his back development and nail his conditioning and come with shredded physique, he could be a real threat to anyone on stage. For Big Ramy, the question is whether he can recapture some of that fullness and detail that made him Mr. Olympia. What do you think? Do you agree with our breakdown of these poses? Who would you pick in a head-to-head battle between these two mass monsters? Let me know in the comments below. And that's it for today's video, guys. If you enjoyed this breakdown, please give the video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more bodybuilding content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.